Sisters, come together now, come together now. It's time to help each other out, help each other out.
Welcome to the SOAR podcast. This is a platform for sisters to gather and have some empowering conversations. And in the process of these conversations, we help each other overcome some limiting beliefs. I want you to join the conversation. I appreciate your likes, subscribes, and comments. This podcast is sponsored by Stephanie Brown Coaching. If you have any limiting beliefs that are holding you back, feel free to contact the coach at sociotap.com/StephBrownMD.
Welcome to SOAR. I'm Dr. Stephanie. I'm a life coach and a physician, and I am the host of the SOAR show, where sisters overcome and rise by overcoming their limiting beliefs so we can live our best lives. And I'd like to introduce my co-host.
Hi, my name is Mason. I'm the co-host for the SOAR show and radio engineer and editor.
And tonight is our finale. It has been exactly 1 year that we have been doing this show together, and it's been an amazing ride. So we want to share with you some of the backstory of the SOAR show and a few clips from some of our 37 episodes that we've done over the past year. We're so excited and grateful to have made it to the 1 year mark. I celebrated this week with a Zoom party, and some of my past guests and friends who supported us on this journey came along, played some games, won some prizes, and we really did have a blast. Now, the title of this finale is Her Evolution. But that's not just about my evolution as a radio host and a podcaster, and ultimately my evolution in going from someone who didn't even like the sound of her voice to someone who embraces every opportunity to use my voice. But it's also about all of my guests. The stories they shared were all stories of evolution and growth. So this journey has truly been about her evolution. Even though this is the last radio show, the podcast will still be around, so you can continue to listen in and join in on some empowering conversations for Black women. Make sure you subscribe to my podcast on Podbean or Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Just type in Sisters Overcoming and Rising, all one word. And if you want to catch our upcoming video podcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Stephanie Coach. So do you want to tell our audience how we got started doing this whole radio show thing?
Okay, so we started with Blog Talk. My job was to read the text messages to Dr. Stephanie. It was pretty boring, and I didn't really do much.
Yeah. Yep, we went from only needing a telephone to call into the shows to traveling to a studio that was 90 minutes away every week to purchasing equipment and setting up a home studio. And as I was looking back over the year and I was reviewing the past episodes, I noticed 7 themes that emerged with our shows. All of our shows fall into these 7 categories: wellness, education, family, success, overcoming trials, activism, and aspiration. So we thought it might be nice to give you a sampling of what SOAR has been about over the past year. So we're going to start with our family theme. The next 2 clips are from the Pushing Past No and Infertility episode with Lisa Fleet, where she talks about her struggles with infertility. And the clip that you'll hear after that one is from the Choosing Your Own Happily Ever After show, where Malkia Lydia talks about middle age and getting to that point where you choose your own happily ever after.
It just felt like every part of this process has been a no. I had one yes, but I had multiple no's, and it was just staying faithful, staying prayed up, most definitely having my husband there to support me was one of the biggest parts of me being able to push past the no's, and him really saying, Lisa, this is where we have to be. This is just giving me realistic suggestions and encouraging me. And I oftentimes I have to realize that he's going through the same thing that I'm going through, but he has really been my rock through the fertility issues. But I guess those are really the no's. And some of the biggest things that have helped me to really stay sound is the support. So what I did, I didn't find my first time around with IVF, I didn't see a lot of me in those clinics.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like this, where are the Black women? Where does this happen to Black women, or are they not talking about it, or what's going on? And I would join groups on Facebook, and a lot of the worry and concern were not worries and concerns that I had.
Yeah.
I wasn't worried about my husband leaving me. I wasn't worried about my family thinking I was worthless. Like, I had all of that support from them, but I needed somebody who really was going through it and sort of had a similar story to me. And I didn't find that with other women of other colors. And that's just, I guess, just how it was for me. So that's one of the reasons I suffered through everything until I had Chloe. And once I had Chloe, I was comfortable sharing. If I looking back at that now, I would not have waited. I should not have waited that long to share my story, because those years were very hard. The 3 years were very hard before Chloe came along. But once I had her, I was able to share my story of success, and it drew other women to me. And I mean, I didn't know so many women were dealing with fertility issues. And so now I have created like a safe space for other women who we will go to lunch. We have long talks on the phone, whether it could be text messages. I just have a group of women, and we communicate with each other, and we talk with each other, and we're actually able to help support each other as we move along this process. Because although I had a child, I have Chloe, and I'm happy, I'm still dealing with fertility issues. So I'm still in that space. So it was just being able to get that help and support. And for some, it's a professional help. And for some others, it's just that emotional support from other women who are going through similar issues. And I think for a lot of women, it's just taking care of yourself physically and mentally, keeping those things as positive and in line as much as you can. Especially during this pandemic, because this adds a whole nother element to it, and trying to stay motivated and encouraged. So I lost my motivation. I know, for the short story, when we were going through the process of having my daughter, we brought I went to like Walmart and brought a little onesie, and we hung it in our room, and took a picture down and put that in its place. And that was just a reminder every day to stay motivated. And that was her first outfit that she wore. So I did the same for after her. I went and brought another little onesie, put it up. And after the first loss, I said, I'm not going to take it down. I'm going to keep it up. We're going to try again. And after that second loss, I took it down. Like, I sort of lost my way. I lost all hope to just be able to move past it. And it took time. You have to give your body time. You have to give yourself time to heal. Your doctors will have you wanting to just push through. They're looking at your age. Yeah. They're looking at so many different things on their end, but you have to heal and be able to give it 100%, because you can't go in doubting. You can't do it. It's just like when every relationship, you can't bring the baggage from one relationship to the next. You have to try to come in as clear and open as possible. So I had to get to that place. So it was just about a couple of weeks ago that I was able to pull that onesie out of a drawer and hang it back up, and really start to say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get back into the game and try this again.
I want to make sure that things that I attach myself to in terms of life partnerships and relationships and all of that it's all in alignment with that, and that I can attract in my space and in my world people who want the same things for themselves. Like, I want it to be a mutual type situation. That's what's exciting for me as I look at the next 50. So.
Absolutely.
this is a really pertinent topic in middle age, because by the time we reach middle age, we're at the point where we start to reflect on where we are in life, where we want to be, and if we are where we want to be. Now, I'm not sure if the two of us are really middle-aged, because 50 is the new 30, but what have you been reflecting on during this time in your life?
Yeah, you're funny. And I have to say, for me, calling myself middle-aged is acknowledging that 100 is my goal. And so technically I'm at the halfway mark. I'm not living out the Golden Girls or anything like that, but I'm definitely at a place where this is a real opportunity. You know, if there's something that I want to be, or some, you know, goal in terms of my character that I want to go after, or just even, you know, goals on how I want to spend my time and what I want to contribute, what is the waiting for at this point? You know what I'm saying? You know, you can't put it off forever. You have to go for it. And 50 just seems like a time to kind of like sit down and recalibrate. And then I also, honestly, you know, this topic, I brought it up, but like I told you before this conversation tonight, it came with some trepidation, because do I want to talk about the fact that there's a little bit of worry, like maybe I haven't been completely on the path that I want to be on. And one of the main areas that comes up for me in regards to is mothering, you know, becoming a mother. You know, it's not like when you're 25 or even 35 where you can say, okay, you know, I can think about that again in a couple of years. No. Mother Nature's like, that's not how it works, you know. So I want to give myself room to think about it. And it's brought up so much for me. Once you get past the lies around, oh, this generation of women hasn't chosen mothering because of career, you know, that BS, that's not what it is.
Right.
It's just brought up a lot for me. And I know we'll get into it more in this conversation. It's brought up a lot for me. And again, I want to make sure that I am choosing what I choose out of like real purpose and reasons, as opposed to like some fear of missing out. To me, that's the most selfish reason in the world to become a mother, is fear of missing out. I'll be honest, you know. So anyway, we'll get into more of that.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes total sense. Just like what you brought up before, wanting to be on purpose and in alignment and be your truest form of truth, I think you mentioned. So it would make sense that would be a cognitive dissonance to do something just because you're afraid of missing out, if it's not in alignment with your truest truth. Now, as you talked about, for some of us, there are things that we expected to have by this point in our lives. It might be career success, or it might be children, or a husband, or recognition of or it might be a certain level of health. So how does one embrace and rethink middle age when you don't have the things that you thought you would have by this point in your life?
You know, I think that I'm slowly getting that nobody is at the place they thought they were going to be at middle age. And it's probably true at some other age, you know, important markers in life as well. Nobody is exactly where you thought you would be. And that's okay. You know, so what do you do with that? And that's what I'm figuring out right now. So for one, I had to take some of my own advice, because when I talk to like younger members in my family, or folks that I've coached, or just friends, you know, who feel, you know, either some remorse about something, or that they're off track or in some kind of way, I always say to them, you're alive. Like, as long as you have breath and you are on this planet, 100% is possible. Like, whatever it is you're going for is possible. Complete, you know, transformation is possible. Like, those are some woo-woo words, but you know what I'm saying? It can apply to just very practical things. Doesn't mean that there won't be some effort required. It doesn't mean there won't be some things that you got to let go of or give up. And it doesn't mean, like, I'm not necessarily saying pursuing some just fake external validation of some sort, but you really can do anything as long as you are here on the planet and alive. So
I know after hearing those clips, you want to listen to the entire interview. I know. And you're in luck, because you'll find the interview in its entirety on the SOAR podcast. So make sure you check it out. We have been truly blessed to have some amazing guests on this show, but things have not always gone smoothly. There have been lots of times where we struggled. And Mason, what would you say was the most difficult time that we had with this show?
One of the times that we messed up was when we were doing the show in the car. We had to do it because we were going to dinner or something, but it was different. We did it. So it's good to know that we could do that.
Yeah, we were in the Poconos and the reception kept going in and out, and we're driving through the mountains and the show kept dropping, and we were trying to get to dinner and we had to take the laptop with us. That was a mess.
Yup, that was terrible. But we pulled through. Another one would be when we were just too lazy to do the show. That's one of the worst things, because if you do that, you got to do it the day of the show. And then you got to do the show, you got to record it, you got to edit it. It's awful.
You have to edit it, right? So there were plenty of times where we did the show and it was late at night. It was almost midnight and I'm exhausted. And we finally finished and I get to go to bed. I'm like, peace out, Mason. And Mason is up another hour editing the show. But you held it down.
I did. It was worth it though. All the support is really grateful. We love it. And then finally, it would be whenever we were hungry or sleepy. Those are like the two worst combinations. So like one day we woke up, we were about to do the show, and then my dad left. And he took the dog to the dog park. So I was like, oh, we need to eat. And then my mom, she was hungry too. She just woke up. We both woke up. We were doing a show. We were recording it. It was awful. We were hangry.
We were hangry.
We kept yelling at each other. We were like, no, do this. And then I was like, but I can't. And I was playing around. It was awful.
It was awful. And then finally, at the same time, we both looked at each other and said, we didn't eat yet, did we?
Yup. Then we noticed. We said, that's why we're mad. That's why we're yelling at each other.
Yeah. So those are just some of the times that it didn't go smoothly. But we'll be back with more SOAR secrets after we revisit our wellness theme. Now, wellness has been an overarching theme in many of our shows, but some episodes were specifically dedicated to wellness, like the Self-Care is the New #Relationship Goals show we did with Quanda Bryant around Valentine's Day, and the Carrying the Weight of Generational Trauma show that I did with Dr. Jessica Smedley. So let's take a listen.
I also think that when we care for ourselves, it can even make us a better partner when we're in a relationship. And it also shows our partner how we want to be treated. So I think that there's a connection between having that self-love and showing it, not just feeling it on the inside, but actually showing how much you love yourself and having that be a healthy thing for a relationship and for your partner to see. What's your take on that?
Well, I feel like it's important that you demonstrate what it is that you like. Yeah, well, you're basically giving them a course on how you want to be treated and what treatment gets the best response out of you. I mean, if you love flowers, buy yourself some flowers. If you like a nice hot bath with candles and some soft jazz in the background, do that. Number one, because it feels good to you, you need to allow them to see that. But also, it allows your spouse to not only see it, but mimic that behavior. And that's especially if they don't have any ideas on how to pamper you in the first place. If they watch you long enough, they'll see.
Exactly. You're actually doing some work for them. See, you're cutting out the research. They can just watch what you do. It's sort of like when your spouse asks you what you want for Christmas and you're able to tell them exactly what you want so you never get a bad gift.
Exactly.
Yep. The older I get, the more I am in favor of that approach. So as someone, I'm just really curious, since you're someone who has dedicated your life and your business to helping women discover how to love themselves and how to pamper themselves, what is your ideal way to take care of yourself?
I love this question. A spa day. A spa day is my go-to every time that I really want to splurge and take care of myself.
And we know that a spa day can include just about every spa service. So that's a definite for me.
Yeah, spa day is definitely high up there on my list. What do you think it is about the spa day that just makes you feel like you're loving on yourself?
Oh, because in a way, someone's loving on me. I have someone rubbing my feet. They're rubbing my back, facial, scalp massage, all the different treatments. Oh my goodness. That's a great stress reliever in and of itself.
Yeah. And you really touched on something that is, and that's physical touch. Physical touch is definitely something that I think we crave as people. I know as women, I'm more familiar with women because I'm a woman, but that physical touch is something that is, it stimulates our nerves. It releases endorphins. I mean, there's physiologic reasons as well as other reasons why that makes us feel good and makes us feel loved. So
we're supposed to touch. I mean, we're not created to be alone. We are created to communicate and to express ourselves with one another and to hold each other. Babies thrive from being held. And I would go as far as to say that women thrive from being held. We love that, being held by our fathers, being held by our mothers, and then eventually our spouses. So, and that's not just relegated to women, obviously. Men need to be held as well, but we are talking about women right now. So,
Well, see, gentlemen, that's a freebie for you right there. Women thrive on being held.
Hold her, please.
Exactly. Those cuddles are currency.
I'm learning more about generational trauma.
Sure.
I'm learning a lot from you because I also learned another new term, which is emotionally constipated. And maybe that really stood out to me because as a physician, I deal with that physical part of it. And so I'm like, oh, you can be emotionally constipated too. And it's very descriptive, but I'd love for you to give some examples of how emotional constipation might present in one's behavior.
Sure. So the first thing that pops in my mind, as you ask this question, is that it may not show up because it's somebody who's going through life on autopilot. It's somebody who's numb or shut down, emotionally unavailable. It might be the person who shows up and is a functional person, but doesn't really solve conflict or doesn't really engage in challenging conversations or avoids, life problems. They may not have a wide variety of emotional vocabulary, so they might only stick to, if at all, sad, mad, happy. Versus frustrated or hurt or, elated or confused.
Right.
So I think it's that presentation of how they might show up.
That's a great point that, it may not show up. And I've also noticed that some people, and I don't know if this falls into the category of emotionally constipated, but some people can express like one spectrum of emotions. They can express joy, they can express love, but they're not able to verbally express anger. If you bring up that it seems like you might be angry, they deny, I'm not angry, I'm not upset. And they're visibly angry, but they can't express that spectrum of emotions. Would that fall into emotionally constipated?
I think so, because I think it's a blockage, right? So medically, I'm sure you see it as a blockage, but it's also an emotional blockage because you're only tied into that one domain of your well-being. Of course, there are different reasons as to why someone might present that way, but I think that it is a limited awareness or self-awareness of how somebody is emoting or choosing not to.
Exactly. It's a blockage. Yeah. So you've got your work cut out for you in terms of helping people get past these blockages.
That's funny.
So So your blog post is called Dr. Jess on Black Stress, which is a phenomenal name.
Thank you.
And so when I read that and I hear Black stress, what comes to mind is sort of like, what is the difference between Black stress and stress in general? I have an idea of what it is, but I would love to hear you talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I started the blog recently as a response to the current social unrest, and then just a way to even process and channel my energy in a very intentional way. I personally find writing very therapeutic, but also educating our people on us and how we're doing and our mental health.
Yes.
So I specifically chose and to intentionally call it Black stress because in addition to financial stressors or work stressors or school stressors, we have unique stress that comes along with our experiences of being Black in America. And so I wanted to intentionally create a space to highlight some of those areas and to give voice and attention to our experiences of racism or the stressors that come with navigating white spaces and the fatigue that comes along with that.
Yes.
The reality of the ways that we experience disparities in our lives, whether it's healthcare, financial, or home buying, just, all domains of life are impacted, unfortunately, by the presence of racism. And so I just really wanted to be intentional and give voice to that.
That is wonderful it's wonderful that you were able to channel some of your energy that way and give voice to that for us as Black people to have that space to be able to process and to see, it's not just me. This is kind of a community-wide thing. And the other thing that occurs to me is that it's also powerful to give space to other people because I know right now with the racial unrest, most Black people are too tired to explain to other people what it's like. It's just tiring. It's exhausting. We already have to feel it and live through it. And then to have to re-traumatize ourselves by sort of explaining those situations to others, it's just too much right now.
Mason, what would you say is the funniest thing that has happened with the SOAR show over this past year?
Oh my gosh. So, the funniest thing to me was when we had my cousin over and then she was on the show. If you remember, it was one of the shows where she was talking about gifts for teens. So, her name was Michaela, if you remember. I forget which show that is, but that was one of the funniest moments to me because she kept messing up over and over again, and we all did. So we had to keep going back. We kept making noise. We kept falling. It was hilarious. So that's the funniest thing to me.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. There have been a lot of funny things, but that was pretty funny. But since we're talking about humor, this is a great segue into our next theme, and that is our aspirational theme. Now, here on SOAR, we teamed up with another podcast called the Girl, Can I Ask You Something podcast. And we got a chance to interview Tawanda and Rumel on the subject of what would you tell your 20-year-old self? And let me tell you, that entire episode was hilarious. And if you want laughs, you should definitely subscribe to their podcast as well. And Tara Godby is our second clip from the aspirational theme, with her interview about her TV show, The Girlfriend's House, From Dream to Reality. And that was a really awesome episode about dreams and how we can make our dreams into reality. Now let's listen in to some of the humor and our aspirational theme.
I think we're saying the same thing in different perspectives. From a different perspective, you are much better at identifying different parts of your life and speaking to that and acknowledging and seeing where that still lives in you today. And you still speak to her. I'm speaking to something too. It could be from my older self, but right now I just see it as the accumulation of who I am today. Mm-hmm. And I try to speak to that person. And I think about the girl who was 20 and the decisions that girl made. And I still, I try to forgive that situation. I try to say, you know what, she did that because she didn't know any better. She did that and because she didn't know she was enough. She still had a lot of holes in her enoughness that weren't filled. And that's why she made those decisions. And then I tell my today self, but that was her then, and her today is going to do better. Her today is going to look at it differently. And so I feel like we're doing something similar, just maybe with a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, I think so too. I have a question for the two of you guys. So what would your 20-year-old self want to tell you? That's a good one.
I know. See, why you have to do that? That wasn't in the show notes. I wasn't prepared for that question.
I know. Here she go again, taking over my show.
I know, right? You ain't never gonna get an invitation back from Mel.
No, I know. I'll behave. No, that is a good one. And I thought about that question. I didn't have an answer for it right away, but I think what my 20-year-old self would tell my today self is, I am so proud of you, girl. You have done amazing things, and you are Black girl magic personified. Obviously, I wouldn't know that phrase, but that's what I would tell myself. And I would tell her, whenever you feel discouraged or you feel like you're not as far as you should be, think about where you were when you were me and look at where you are now. You are way beyond what anybody ever expected us to be able to do. Wow. I love that. I think as a 20-year-old, I think I lived so much in the now. Of course, I was thinking about my future, but, you know, when you're 20 and you don't have the responsibilities to worry about, like, you got to get home to your kids and you got to, you know, as an older person, I always have the pressures of other things coming into play. But as a 20-year-old, I think I lived life with a lot less restriction. And I think my 20-year-old self would say, girl, just let go just a little bit. In the same way that I would say to my 20-year-old self, like, who felt kind of wound up, like all this wound up energy that I needed to get out and, you know, create and do and be this big career woman. I think I would say, my 20-year-old self would say, you know, you've done these things. Now it's okay for you to live back in the moment. So I think it's kind of both ways.
That's awesome. I love that. I love how your 20-year-old self can give your future self some advice on living in the moment, because she's good at doing that.
Yeah. She was excellent. She had a lot of fun. We didn't think about all the repercussions.
I think I was having trouble figuring out what in the world my 20-year-old self could tell me, because she ain't no crap. Right? But there was a few things that 20-year-old Twanda knew that 46-year-old Twanda keeps forgetting. That, so I think my 20-year-old self would remind my present self of all the things that I thought was fun, or what my passions are. Because oftentimes I forget, because I've got too many other people's fun and passions to think about on a daily basis. So I forget. So I think my 20-year-old, because she was young and didn't have as much pressure of the world, so she was into her passions. I could probably list them out easily, and what I did for fun and what was curious for me and what was interesting.
I'm actually going to be 50 in a couple days. So, yeah. So in my 50 years of life, I have experienced a lot of things. I have experienced heartache. I have experienced pain. I have experienced poverty. I have experienced, from my corporate world, I have had a seat at the table. You name it, I have gone through it. And that could be an entire show in itself to tell my life story. I have been divorced. I have 4 kids. I have people in my family who suffer from mental illness, dyslexia. I have, you name it, I have experienced it. Not knowing at the time that it was all part of the plan. Okay? So let's keep that in our bonnet, and I'll go back to that. What I have learned is that in corporate, I felt like there was a way that I had to show up, right? I'm a Black woman with a seat at the table. I'm a Black woman who oftentimes when I'm in the meeting, they would ask, are you taking notes? No, I'm not the secretary, right? Right. But I felt like I had to show up a certain way. It wasn't until I left corporate that I had my hair braided for the first time, right? That I have been able to embrace, and this is weird to say, but it's true. It's my truth, my Blackness, right? And I think that's very freeing. I've always done the right things right. I've gone to the right schools. I knew the right people. I carried myself the right way, whatever that was. And what I have learned is that all those experiences that I talked about earlier made me who I am today. When you're going through it, right? When you're dealing with poverty and homelessness and you're dealing with all those things, you're like, God, why me? But what I have realized that it was all part of the plan. I had to go through those things so that now when people come to me, I come from a place of not textbook, like, oh, the book says that this is what should happen, but a place from been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, let's talk about it. I understand, I've been in your shoes. Now I understand that that's why I have gone through all those things and why I am where I am today. Now, you talked about the positioning. It wasn't until I left corporate that I started to become my authentic self. Yeah. I started to become my authentic me, sharing my story, sharing who I am, not being ashamed that I talk proper, not being ashamed that I grew up in the projects and now I live in a very affluent neighborhood, right? Not being ashamed of any of the things, but becoming like I have my braids in now and and I wear soft locks sometimes and I'm just all these things that I was afraid to do. But what I have known, and I'm going to go back to your question now, is the pitch is your authenticity. The pitch is being who you truly are. When you make up the story and when you say, oh, this is what's going to grab them, even though there may be some truth to it, being able to sit in that is what draws the right people to you. And so being able to own that truth, when I say that it fell into my lap, I think what fell into my lap was my ability to see Tara for who she is. And to be able to accept her for who she is. And I don't believe that I had ever given myself permission before that. And I will tell you that when I was in corporate and I was 6-figure salary and all those benefits that you have in that, and I call it the golden handcuffs, I felt uncomfortable when it got closer to the end. I felt like I was heavy, like it didn't fit right. And that's because I wasn't living in my authenticity. And what happened is once I became the full me that I am and I'm growing into every single day because it continues to grow, things started to happen. And so when people tell you, just be yourself, right? It sounds like lip service and we don't really understand what that means, but they are absolutely giving you the best pitch.
Did you enjoy those aspirational clips? Tara was dropping some knowledge there with talking about the pitch really is your authenticity. The way you're going to get those opportunities to show up is just by being the authentic you. And I always have fun with Rumel and Tawanda of the Girl Can I Ask You Something podcast. So now I told you we're going to talk about some more of the behind the scenes secrets of SOAR. So now we're going to talk about our biggest bloopers. But first we'll let Mason tell you what his job is, right? His job is actually to do everything, but I'll let him tell you as the radio engineer. Mason, what do you do?
I record the show with my mom late at night when I'm really sleepy for no reason. I don't know why, but we do anyways. And then I have to edit that show even later at night for no reason. But despite all the flaws, it's a fun thing to do. I feel like learning this thing has opened up new paths for me in the future, and I can just roll with it if I want to.
That is true. And we also have a lot of fun. Even though it's late at night and sometimes we get on each other's nerves, we do vibe to the music and we really enjoy each other's company most of the time. So what would you say has been one of the biggest bloopers of the SOAR show?
Okay, so there was just one time where we were doing a normal show. Everything was normal. We weren't sleepy, we weren't fighting or anything, but my mom got hungry. And then she went upstairs. She made a bowl of cereal, came back down, started eating. She was eating so much. I was warning her too. I was like, you got a minute? You sure you can finish that in a minute? She's like, yeah, I can finish it. So I was like, okay. And then she said she would finish it. She finished it. But then we got to the recording, and then she was like, okay. So what we have to do? Welcome back. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I started laughing in the middle of the recording. So we had to redo it. And then she had to finish smacking. So I had to record that. I had to edit that late at night. Everything. Like,
yeah. Well, is that the time where the whole second half of the show didn't record? We went through the whole process of recording the show. And when Mason went back to edit it, the whole second half of the show was missing. Or was that a different time?
No, that was probably the same time. I was sleepy too. It don't even matter.
So obviously we have lots of bloopers. I have interviewed some pretty badass women on this show who've been able to share a lot of knowledge about keys to success and some very shocking and inspiring stories about overcoming trials and tribulations. Remember, you're going to want to subscribe to the Sisters Overcoming and Rising podcast and the Dr. Stephanie Coach YouTube channel after you hear these appetizers so you can get the full meal. Thanks for conquering those limiting beliefs on another episode of the SOAR podcast. If you want to reach out to my guest, just check out the show notes and all of the contact information is there. If you want more information about Stephanie Brown Coaching, go to www.stephaniebrowncoaching.com. And I'm sure you're already following the SOAR podcast Instagram page. But if not, just go to IG and type in Sisters Overcoming and Rising, all one word. Goodbye for now.